Good evening.
Hello.
I love being in a room full of students and social work educators because you are so engaging. It's fantastic. Let me get myself set up here so that you can see what we're going to do here. Warming up as we go. Warming up. Okay, that works.
Just a second.
No, sure, take your time. I also want to thank PAUSWE for inviting me to speak. I originally had submitted to present a workshop about leadership because as an educator, and a relatively new educator, I have been at Luckhaven now for 3 years, and I am noticing more and more the need for students to start to develop leadership skills earlier. Before we throw you into the practice world where you want to do worthy things like save the world, that you should have some skills around how to do that. And so tonight we are actually going to sort of, I am wondering why we are not, that's not full screen. Give me 1 second here. I'm a little, let's go back. There we go, is that a little bit better?
Yeah.
Okay, so with that, I'm going to kind of jump in. As an educator, I love Prezi. I think it's very interactive. For those of you that are not familiar with Prezi, I may make you a little bit seasick, and I apologize. So if you're not familiar, kind of hold on to your chairs or your neighbor. Either way, you'll be okay. Out of curiosity, how many educators, social work faculty are in the room? Raise your hands and show me where you are. Okay. How many students? Where are the students? Awesome. Okay, do we have any clinicians? Oh, this is fantastic. Okay, so we're going to bridge the gap, and we're going to kind of make some connections. So hang on for the ride. I love this. The tiny seed knew that in order to grow, it needed to be dropped into dirt, covered in darkness, and struggle to reach the light. How many of you in your education at times have felt like you were extremely in the darkness and you went, I have no idea what I'm doing here? Big waves in the hand, right? There we are. Okay, look around, you're not alone, right? Isn't that comforting? It's so comforting to me. What I will tell you is that the struggle is worth it. I am a new doctoral student, and the struggle is real. I'm just going to say that. The struggle is real. And so I think that what we need to appreciate is that as you go out into the world and you have clients, they are in the struggle, right? We are working with vulnerable and oppressed populations who live the struggle every day. And so on some level, we are extremely fortunate that we have access to education and the tools and skills that is social work education to get us there to be able to do that. And so one of the things that, for me, when I think about leadership, and actually when I was getting prepared, I Googled, what is leadership in images? And these are the 2 first images that came up. And I think this is sort of a very business, authoritarian perspective. And that's not who social workers usually are. We're not authoritative, right? We like to collaborate. And so I looked up further than the definition. And what is a leader? A leader is a person who leads or commands a group, organization, or country. Now to me, as a social work educator, I think I don't want to command everyone. That goes against our core values. Completely against all of our 6 core values. Certainly in education, it goes against our core competencies and our practice behaviors that are outlined by the Council of Social Work Education. So I went a step further and I said, okay, so if that's how the general public defines leader, what do they say about leadership? It's the action of leading a group of people or organization. Okay, my doctoral program is education and leadership. I kind of am with that. The state or position of being a leader. How many people love definitions that use the word in the definition? It's like my least favorite thing. You don't understand it. And so I thought, okay, what do I really want to say to a room full of clinicians, students, and social work educators? We're going to have some fun. Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to ask you to make a call to leadership. And by a call, that means that there's a response. It requires a response, right? We know that change requires action. In order to change something, you have to do something. You cannot sit passively by. It doesn't work that way. In order to be a leader, you have to be firmly rooted in your desire, right? You actually have to say, okay, who am I? Which is why we talk about authentically showing up, being genuine, having empathy. These are all familiar terms to the people in this room. But you also have to be rooted in your truth. And a lot of times I think that we forget what that is. Or it's easy to not be willing to really step forward and say, this is who I am, this is what I believe in, and this is how I'm going to get there. And so I'm asking you to make a call to your internal leader. Not to the definition of what leadership is and what a leader, what we just heard. I'm going to try to rock your world in terms of how you think about leadership. So traditionally, when we think about leaders, these are common words, right? We think about, oh, they're a motivator. If I were to say to you, and since I am a teacher, audience participation is very welcome. Based on these words that are up here, role model, you're compassionate, you're task-centered, who do you think of? What person comes to mind when you say leader?
MLK.
Okay, Martin Luther King, right? I don't think anybody in this room would disagree with you. Martin Luther King is a leader. Who else comes to mind immediately? Yeah, way in the back. The president. Sure, absolutely, the president. Who else? Think social work history.
Jane Addams.
Okay, Jane Addams, which I recently just found out, well, no, I guess I didn't really find out, but we had this really big debate about whether she was actually a social worker because social work education had not officially begun when she was doing all the cool stuff with the Hull House that she was doing. Okay, anybody else? Yes?
Ellen Gates Starr.
Yes, Ellen Gates Starr, fantastic. Yes, sir?
Community voice?
Yes, right? So you have an idea when you start to think about who are leaders, you can clearly identify them. Do you think of yourself as a leader? I want you to ask yourself this question as we go through this. Okay, I really want you to think about, how am I a leader in my life? How am I a leader with my family? How am I a leader with my friends? And how are those things going to then call me to be a leader within the social work profession? Because that's really what we're here to talk about. The one thing that's not on here is that I think that leaders are relationship-oriented, right? Leaders are relationship-oriented. You know when you're in front of a person that you kind of want to just get to know them. You want to be around them because they're drawn and you're drawn to their energy. So they're relationship-oriented. To me, that's social work. We are relationship-oriented. So of course, social workers are natural leaders. So I'm going to tell you a short story. I like stories. I just came back from a conference in San Francisco. I went to a conference called Emerging Women Live, where I was with 525 other women for 4 days. Now, I'm going to make maybe a little bit of an inappropriate joke, but I am gay, I am married, my wife lives in Lockhaven, and after 4 days with 525 women, I was ready for a little male energy, because 525 women in one room for 4 days. We started at 7 in the morning and went until 9 o'clock at night. It was a little overwhelming. The other thing that I want to tell you about this is that out of the 525 attendees at this conference, there were maybe 8 people that were not business people. Okay, so first of all, I am extremely, extremely grateful to be in a room full of people that speak my language, because I sat listening to really powerful speakers. And in fact, I'm going to just sort of share some observations. Their main keynote speaker was Dr. Jane Goodall, who was absolutely phenomenal to listen to, humble as the day is long. That was Thursday evening. On Friday, we had 2 pretty powerful speakers. We had Dr. Brené Brown, who most people in this room will know. We had Elizabeth Gilbert, who wrote Eat, Pray, Love, and has a new book out called Big Magic. The following day, we had Dr. Trent, who is the woman from Zimbabwe, who Oprah gave a lot of money to return to her home country and build schools. Okay, so there should be an observation that as a social worker, I'm making, and that all of you in this room should start to make. I'm at a conference for business, and not one person is a CEO. And all these people that are keynote speakers are talking about having humility, being vulnerable, taking risks, showing up and being seen, right? And my favorite was they had a panel talk about unconscious bias, and they told a story about how a young African-American woman went to pitch this business deal. She had been invited to pitch a business deal. And when she got there, one of the, and I'm separating race for a very distinct purpose, because when you hear what I say, none of you will be shocked. The room was shocked. When she walked into the company to pitch the deal, one of the males executive, who happened to be white, looked at her, handed her the trash, and said, "Can you please take this out for me?" And as a social worker, I'm going, okay, that doesn't surprise me, right? Because we know that there's still a lot of inequality. These room full of business women went, and they're talking about unconscious bias, and then they're talking, that was blatant bias, but unconscious bias, and they're to me, I'm going, this is a new concept for you? Because, what? How is this a new concept for you? This is what we talk about every day. My students will attest to that. And so I'm going to tell you a story about the power of relationship, because I did get to meet Brené Brown. And that was really awesome, because she is as humble in person as she is on stage. But what I will tell you is that I think, if my perception was accurate, she was also slightly uncomfortable. So here is me shaking her hand at the book signing, and she says very calmly, "Hi, I'm Brené," and my heart is like beating really fast. And I say, "Hi, I'm Amy." And the person taking the picture, I then went on and said, "And I'm a social work faculty member." Right? Ready? Wait for it, it's exciting. Right? Yeah, totally cool. And I think that she really felt like, on some level, I'm surrounded by business women, but you are my people. And I think she felt relieved. I could hardly speak, but I think she felt relieved. But I really think that business people have something. They're paying attention to something. I have to admit, I was a little bit upset. I was a little bit, I want to say angry. Because I feel like as social workers, when we think about leaders, we think about power, and power tends to make social workers uncomfortable, right? It's why when we think about, oh, social workers, you have a good heart, but you're not going to make any money, right? I'm here to tell you that myth for me was completely blown up at this conference. They are going to capitalize on what we know how to do very well, because that's what business people do. They capitalize on what we do well. So I think I feel a little bit of, I'm going to say territorial, that I think in social work we have to develop an understanding of business and money and recognize that part of, for me, stepping into my truth is what we're worth. Because if we don't step in with that, we are going to miss out in the next generation of education. We absolutely are going to miss out. I was really moved by that. Had you asked me that on Thursday, when I started this conference, if I would have come out going, oh, absolutely, business needs social work, they figured that out, but social workers need businesses that are not just nonprofit, I would have said, no way. I am a hardcore social worker. I want to get my hands dirty and be poor in the process. Right? That is not the right answer. It is not the right answer. So, why leadership? Why leadership at PAUSWE? Where are the students again? Okay. This is why. You are why. I wish 20 years ago, 25 years ago maybe, when I started my undergraduate education, that someone had told me what I was really worth. Because the only way that we're going to change what we're really worth is to really advocate for that. And I'm excited to have Amy Sagan talk about BSW licensure, because I'm going to tell you right now, there is the key. You have been given a bargaining chip that says, I am worth more as a bachelor's level social work student because I can be licensed in the state where I want to practice. That is power in your pocket. And you need to understand that. And you need to do something with it. Okay? So, how do we redefine leadership through the social work lens? Hang on, this is really cool. Ready? We're going in the eye. I felt so tech savvy when I figured this out. I was like, I am so cool. All right, so according to the University of North Carolina, this is their social work program. I like this definition of leadership a lot better. Social work leadership is the capacity to work creatively, constructively, and effectively with individuals, families, groups, organizations, and communities, right? So we've got micro, meso, macro, to promote social justice, to catalyze social change, and to address individual and social problems. Who in this room doesn't want to do that? That's exciting, right? That's cool. I don't know about you, but I read that and I'm like, yeah, I want to do that. I want to be that person. Awesome, right? Okay. So the way in which we do that means that you have to look at yourself a little bit differently. I also think that we have to understand that leadership requires community, right? And community, if you actually break the word community down, it means with unity. And to me, as social workers, right, we want to be together. How many of you saw the Legislative Advocacy Day? We are social workers and we are proud, right? So when we're stronger, when we're together, we teach that to clients. If we want clients to really get access to equal resources, equal rights, we say, let's get them together. Because there's power in numbers. There's probably about 40 people in this room. That's a powerful number to make a difference, to make a change. And so we have to do it as a community. We are a community of social work. Does anybody here not have a social work degree? I mean, we're all social workers, right? Yeah, and if you have another degree somewhere, keep it a secret for right now. Being a leader requires us to go to our edge, to go to the edge of what is not comfortable. I have 6 students here today from Lock Haven, and I tell them all the time, I don't want you to be comfortable, because if you're comfortable, you're not learning and you're not growing. It's their favorite thing. They love when I say that. So this is a growing moment. You're uncomfortable. Yes! And they go, right? So you have to go to the edge. And going to the edge requires a certain level of courage that can only come from within inside yourself. I like to think of it as the social work flame. We all have one. It's all inside of us. It burns all the time for something. And every person in this room, it's going to burn for something different. Some of you may be very passionate. Stephanie here today, and I know Stephanie, we worked together a long time ago. She's a clinician, so I'm going to pick on her for a minute. She is passionate about working with children, and she is fantastic in her role. Fantastic. That is her fire. That is her flame. Every single person in here has one. Dr. Granick is international social work man. He is passionate about traveling and understanding global social work. Every single person in here should have a calling. If you don't, find one. Or borrow somebody else's until you find your own. And then you have to take a risk, and you have to kind of say, okay, this is my truth. I'm going to take a risk. And the risk is, in Brené Brown's new book, she talks about sort of the rise, the rumbling, the reckoning, and all these things about true leaders are the ones that fall. If you don't fail at something, you're not going to learn. You're not going to be able to get back up. You have to be willing to risk that what you do is not going to work. And guess what? Your egos are going to survive, and you're going to be okay. Because you're social workers, and you've been given these tools. And hopefully, all of you that are students, people are encouraging you to say, apply these skills to yourself. Look at what your capacity is. Look at what your courage is. Look at where your strength is. Because until you understand your own, it's almost impossible to go out and live the truth with someone else. So let's go into that. I think that cultivating our own leadership requires all of these things. You have to be curious. If you're not curious about how to solve problems and how to think about things, there's no way that you can step into leadership. I think that you have to have a brave heart. Social work is not a profession for the weary. You have to every day be willing to wake up and go, this is hard, and I'm still going to show up and I'm still going to do it. You have to be willing to risk uncertainty. You're going to make decisions that are not always going to be correct. You're probably going to hurt somebody's feelings unintentionally, and that's where accountability comes in. You make it right. You turn around and you say, okay, that was my bad, right? You have to have role models, and I think that right now it's a great time to be a social worker because we have some pretty tremendous role models. Tremendous role models in the field. I think the fact that there is a social work storyteller publishing books and being asked to speak nationally at not only social work conferences, but again, 500. I mean, they also did a live stream at this conference to 11,000 other people. That's a lot of people hearing the message and language of social work. We need to pay attention to that. I'm hoping that, can everybody see that in the back? Okay, because I don't want to read because I know you can read and it's kind of a cool visual, so I'm not going to, if you can read it. A lot of other sort of words here for me that as a leader, I think, it's not about understanding so much how I get over here. It's about understanding how I get right here, right? We have to be with ourselves. For me, that's what cultivating leadership is all about. It's about growing and developing and being willing to make mistakes. I cannot stress that enough. Students tell me all the time that their biggest fear about getting ready to go to field or getting ready to have their first job is that they're going to make a mistake. They're going to fail a client. They're going to do something wrong. And I usually tell them, yeah, you probably will. That's probably going to happen. They're so afraid. They're so afraid of that. Is anybody here getting ready to go to field? Do we have anybody going out into the field? A couple people? Yeah, so hopefully I'm talking to your hearts and you're hearing this message loud and clear that you're not going to learn if you don't screw things up. That's part of the process. There's really not too many mistakes that you can make that you can't go back and fix. And if you're wrong, your clients will tell you. They will tell you when you get it wrong. Oh, you're angry. No, not angry. They'll correct you most of the time. So I thought it would be interesting when I started thinking about leadership. Who are the leaders in my life that brought me here? Interestingly enough, all of the faculty from Lock Haven, of course, are on this page. Some of them you will recognize. I might actually be able to zoom in a little bit here, but some people will know, actually, the Huntington people will know that in the top left-hand corner is Dr. Robert Riley. An amazing man who, when I sat in his classrooms, blew up my brain in a way that when I left, I was always confused and asking more questions. Secretly, I also have to admit, he reminded me of Willie Nelson, and I thought that was kind of cool. The woman next to her is, the woman next to him is Dr. Notestein. She is from Temple University. I had her in my master's program through Temple. The box in the middle are my social work students, and they are here. In fact, they present tomorrow morning. And I have to say that as an educator, I would be lying to all of you, and those of you that are educators, I think you'll know what I'm about to say. There are days when I leave a classroom and I'm not sure who taught who more. These young ladies right here are amazing. And if you have an opportunity to hear their presentation tomorrow at 8 a.m., you should come, because they're going to rock it. And so I look to them and I think, these are the leaders, these are the future leaders, and I am privileged enough to get to spend time with them, and it's awesome. Some of you then may notice Ann Jane Ross in the corner, Professor Ann Jane Ross, also from Lock Haven University. We have Dr. Ron Costin, who for me is just a champion of a man. Shelley Ravello, who is not here, she was supposed to present with Stephanie today. She is actually in Oregon at another conference. She just testified in front of Harrisburg about mental health commitment a couple weeks ago. You can find that on PCN. We have Karen Rice from Millersville. She's at CSWE, I understand. Dr. Paulus, so wherever the gentleman was that was telling us stories about Dr. Paulus, he's not here anymore, he left. He is up there. On the bottom is Leslie Fenton. She's a local Center County woman. She started the TIDES program here in Center County, which is a program for children and their families when they have experienced a grief or a loss. We obviously have Dr. Liz Fisher down there on the bottom. We also have Dr. Janice Gasker. She is from Kutztown. She is also at CSWE. I'm naming them because it's important. There's a purpose here. Okay? Dr. Lynette Wrights, who is also, she's here in the middle. I wish I had a pointer. Actually, do people know? So here we go. Dr. Lynette Wrights is here. Dr. Fisher's here. Dr. Gasker, Dr. Costin, Shelley, Karen, Dr. Paulus. This is Lonnie Woomer and her family. These two are not social workers, but they are awesome women. There's the esteemed Dr. Granick. This is Heather Gervin. She is from Millersville. This is a social worker that was in my high school growing up, at a very large high school. And so she was our school social worker. And then that cool picture in the corner, you'll notice Amy Sagan is in that photo. That is my DSW class. That will be the graduating class of 2018 from the Kutztown, Millersville Collaborate DSW program. I name them because they're people who have shaped me. I can't tell you what it's like to be a new faculty member unless you've been there, which some of you will have been there. What it takes in terms of energy and dedication from your colleagues to help you to grow and learn and become an educator when you step from being a clinician for 20 years into the role of education. It's very different. And so for me, find your leaders. You should have a board in your house somewhere that looks like this. And I could probably add about 40 or 50 other social faces to this. I was running out of room. And so what I want to say to you is, this is my inspiration board. When I'm having moments where I go, I don't really know if I'm a leader, I'm not really sure what I'm doing here, I think about these people. And I think, this is why I'm here. And then of course you can get bigger and broader and go, I'm here because of clients and I'm here because I want to change the world. But this is how it started for me. In classrooms, in counseling offices, with people who were amazing leaders, right? I would be remiss to say that the leaders in my life are not also my wife and my children. While they are not social workers, they are leaders in my life. I learn every day about patience and compassion and and how hard it is to live in a rural community with 2 boys that have 2 moms, and they show tremendous courage that I don't know that I would have. My oldest is going to graduate from Lockhaven this year. My youngest is going to graduate from high school. He just learned to drive. Let's just throw that out there. He just learned to drive. He did pass his license. It was the most terrifying moment in my life as a parent. And now he has a girlfriend. 2 most terrifying things as a parent. Right? But I'm learning to lead courageously in my family, and they show me the way. Right? Think about your own families. Think about who leads the way for you. Most of you would identify a parent or a sibling or a social worker. Right? Okay, so some of you may be going, there's a cool little thing of rocks up here. Right? What is that doing there? Okay, so I'm actually going to pass this around, and what I'd like you to do is I'd like everyone to take a stone out of the class. So Christine Jones, will you be responsible there?
Oh boy.
I also want to say something else while the stones are going around. At this conference that I was at, they kept saying, if you don't have a seat at the table, bring your own chair. And I think we also need to pay attention to that. I think that if you don't have a seat at the table as a social worker, you bring your own chair. You pick it up and you take it and you go. We need to do that because we need to be champions for our clients who don't have chairs to bring to the table. So we're going to bring our chairs and we're going to show up at the leadership table and we're going to say, this is why things need to change. I like the idea that with vision, you can't be what you can't see. So if you don't see yourself as a leader, you're not going to become one. You have to see yourself as a leader. And that requires you to wake up every day and to say, I'm going to choose leadership today. So I think we need to redefine leadership as social workers. And we're going to do that with the stones. So most of you know that stones, the ones that are going around, are actually relatively smooth. In fact, they should be really smooth. Because I purchased them already that way, right? Right. Stones don't start out smooth. Do you know how they become smooth? Yeah, they rub against each other, water flows through them, sand, right? So I heard a woman speak at this conference that I attended, and she talked about how we need to have what she calls grit. And for me, grit is sort of like the rough part. It's the part that has a little bit of an edge to it. And the goal is that by the time you sort of like rub, it's like an exfoliant, and all the ladies in the room will understand that. Grit is like an exfoliant, and so stones also for me represent stability. It's something that you can tangibly hold. We hear expressions like, oh, they were my rock, right? When you think about someone who in your life has been there for you, they were my rock. They didn't start out that way. Right? They started out kind of rough, and we all start out that way. I started out that way. Rough around the edges. And little by little, the people in the slide before worked as grit against my knowledge. They challenged my belief system. They challenged my value system. They challenged the things that, I never thought that I would achieve. In fact, Beth Williams is also in the room, who's an educator from Juniata College. We went to Juniata at the same time for undergrad. And I can tell you right now, sitting here, if she had said to me, you're going to be the keynote speaker at PAUSWE in 2015, I would have looked at her and said, are you crazy? No way, because I fought against being an educator for a really long time. And so for me, I guess, what I want you to do with this stone is I want you to remember this moment. It's yours to keep. I want you to take it with you wherever you go. If you're a nervous presenter, put it in your pocket. It's smooth, so you can kind of get away with it in your pocket and rub against it. A little public speaking trick. But I want you to remember that if you are not yet smooth, that's okay. You're a work in progress. But the call to leadership today is that as social workers, and all of us in here are social workers, we absolutely have to be willing to go to the edge and bring a chair to the table. Thank you.